The refereeing in this country is a joke. It's an absolute joke, but we knew that already. Again, certain decisions that went against Arsenal and or Newcastle in this game will stand in any other Premier League game to follow. I personally think, when you look at the Premier League and they talk about it as an entertainment product, controversy sells like in showbiz. And that's why you see this inconsistencies, between Bruno Gomares needing to be sent off, maybe even Kai Havertz, to be fair to Newcastle, between Bruno Gomares, Kai Havertz, Joe Linton getting away with murder. The ball going out, let alone offsides and fouls. Again, I did think we switched off for the only goal we conceded. I think we need to play to the whistle regardless, really. I think the refereeing in this country is an absolute joke, and I'm not one to focus on refereeing. I always like to ask myself or my team, away from the dodgy refereeing, can we hold ourselves accountable? Did we do everything we needed to do to get the result we wanted? And for me, we didn't do that. It's the same old thing, as I keep saying, chance creation and chance conversion is going to hold this team back. It does feel like we've improved a tenfold off the ball. It does feel like there was a competitiveness in our game and a relative confidence, but ultimately you need to put the ball in the back of the net. You need to create. That's how football games are won, and we don't look like a team that done that. I think we had 14 shots come the end of the game, 1 on target. How many chances can you lot remember of significance? I remember Martinelli in the first half where he maybe could have squared it for Saka, and it didn't happen. I think that's the only thing I'm really critical. I don't think anybody was terrible. Some players did better than others. Shout Declan Rice and Saliba. Some players evidently showed their limitations. I do think Arteta needed to make those changes sooner. I do think where we find ourselves with the injuries and the inability to cope with injuries is a byproduct of what we did or didn't do in the summer, and maybe an over-importance on relying on certain players that can give us 3-4 decent games, but not players to rely on. Maybe mismanaging funds in certain centre mid products, even though I think he was better than he's had 2 decent games by the on the floor standards this week. Horrible, man. It's a bitter pill to swallow, man. We all knew we wasn't gonna remain unbeaten. Had you have offered me an L or 2 L's in November, I might have taken it. But it is frustrating, man, because the ref has played a massive part in a game like this. And what did Nick Pope have to do? That was the one thing away from the ref I'll look at. What did the goalie have to do? We didn't put Nick Pope under any real pressure. We don't look like a team that can really create or score. That's been the case of the last 2 years, regardless of how the system, rightly so, has been developing and what the goal said on the board. Ultimately, we do have a lot of injuries. So do Newcastle, but we're relying on players that give us a 3-4 decent patch of form. There's very few players we can rely on 10 or so games. And it's too easy. It's side to side. There isn't that healthy randomness. It's too scripted. When our wingers are receiving the ball, they're not really in positions where they're taking men on. Too often they're on the halfway line, really. There's not enough invention or intention or innovativity, really and truly, in our final third play. And it's been something that's cost us. Goals are like buses and defeats are like buses, in that we haven't tasted the L all season, and 2 have come at the same time. All we can do is move forward to Sevilla and Burnley and lick our wounds. Every referee can, without making it obvious, stick that where the sun don't shine, if I'm honest with you. But, I do think ultimately we've lost that Newcastle, which wasn't the case last year. But in a weird way, as I said, I'm disappointed in not creating and converting and keeping the clean sheet, and certain question marks remaining over certain players and a lack of players standing up to be counted. The ref has played a big part. But I think, considering what again, you would have saw my predictions. I said we would have lost 3-1, but it was a bit of a stalemate. It was a scrappy game. It was more of a fight. I think, normally we crumble, and I think under Arteta in the last few years we've risen to that occasion. I don't think we was bullied. I think we gave as good as we got. I do think there was a relative amount of confidence there, but as I said, build up play, isolating our wingers against their defenders, putting Pope under sustained pressure isn't something we could say we done really and truly. I think it was an entertaining game for the neutral, but not in terms of quality, just because of the fouls and the talking points and things like that. And it did look like towards the end of the first half, both teams, with that Havertz challenge, it started getting a bit emotional. But I think it's another game in the week now where really Arteta needs to make changes at halftime, more within the first 10 minutes or a lot sooner. But it was really lost within those 15 minutes. I did think in the second half, we looked a lot off the pace, if I'm honest with you. At halftime, people, we had 8 shots, 1 on target. They had 4 shots, none on target. We had 53% of the ball to a 47. We played 214 passes to 197 of theirs. There wasn't too much in it. We had 4 corners. They had none. I did think, Dan Burn got away with murder. Bruno got away with murder. Almiron got away with murder, but they could probably point to the same. And as I said, big up Newcastle. They competed. They won. You have to be gracious in defeat, people, but ultimately it's a sour taste in the mouth. Now, there's undoubtedly been times where VAR might be in our favor, but I am, even though I think the ball went out personally, and maybe a foul on Gabriel the variables we could have controlled is being switched on. And I think every one of our team players went to sleep for that. And you can't afford to do that in a game like that. I do think we competed a bit well. I think in the first half, there was periods we was moving it from back to front a bit well. But once we get into the final third, we don't look like a team that looks threatening. And this could even, and I know there's injuries, but even when Partey, Jesus, all of these guys that are injured, even when they're there, these are the same things we say, people. As I said, I think we've improved a tenfold off the ball, but it's come at a case on the ball. You know, I do think Benjamin White could have overlapped a bit better today, but there wasn't too much there. I think Martinelli doesn't get enough support. Yeah, man. But I don't think anyone was terrible. But fundamentally, we lost the game, man. Easily, you know, the 45 minutes against Chelsea, the performance against West Ham, worst performance in the season. But I would say this has been the most frustrating game because although I think there were certain variables out of our control and there was some for our control, and I think Newcastle competed, it was a good game. And I think it was a better game against Newcastle than I anticipated. It's one where the ref has, you know, ref has marred it now. Even before the whole, you know, the circus with all those yellow cards, I think he needed to manage the game a bit better. I'm not just saying book people. It's a big game. Emotions are high. How you might manage a game like this might be very different from a standard game, and I don't think the ref is to that occasion for both sides. I don't think the ref had the control over the game, and I would say I don't want no sorry from any PGM or any FA, all of that stuff. All we can do, Arsenal Football Club, is learn to put the ball in the effing back of the net and move forward to Sevilla. And obviously, who we got after Sevilla? Burnley next week. There's no time to feel sorry for ourselves. We were going to drop points, obviously, in this fashion and in this manner. And with them locked down the road, the only unbeaten team, it does leave a sour taste in your mouth because we can't really banter no one this week, people. But it is what it is. We need to keep moving. This month has started off in a terrible fashion. Let me know your thoughts on how the players have played, where you think the game was won and lost, either the refereeing or elsewhere. And appreciative to all of you lot tuned in. You lot stay safe, stay blessed. Let me not take up too much more of your evening. One love.
I think it's like